Testing the sound. Good afternoon, everyone. And just checking both cameras. Okay, checking the sound again. It always helps when I have my sound on to check it. And checking second camera. Hi everyone. It'll be just a few minutes before class starts. I'm going to do a little camera adjusting, and I couldn't do that without being live. There we go. So today we're going to do a lot of ironing. So I got all the tools I need out. I got smart today, got my little iron out. Always using pins that are heat resistant. Marking pen. I have so many things, I don't know where to put them. A button. Because today we're going to use our button foot for the baby lock and brother. For the baby lock, it's M for M, and it looks. Well, let me go to. I'll go to the other camera. It's easier. So it looks like that. You've probably been wondering what the heck is that thing for? Kind of a funny looking contraption. And we're going to do a little test with our edge joining foot. I'm not sure if the, let me see. So you can see the little thing there in the middle. I can't remember, to be honest with you, if this is edge joining or stitch in the ditch. And I'll have to dig the other one out. But the guide in the middle is what we want, and you'll see why. Because they're pretty similar looking. I think this is stitch in the ditch, and I think that the edge joining this guide piece right here goes all the way back. We don't need that. We'll save that for another day. And then, of course, the old J foot. Bobbin thread, top thread should be matching because it's going to show. Let's see what else. What other goodies? Got my buttons. Ironing that. I'm going to be ironing hems, so I use this. Now, this is the old school one, like, from 100 years ago, because, I'm 101. And so this is metal. They still make it, but they make another one that's kind of fabricy. I guess it's silicone, but not really. It feels like a cross between felt and silicone, so it doesn't get hot like this one does. But it's a little different. It's just narrow this way. And I don't recall the markings on it. I'll have to pick one up so I can show you the difference. But this one goes all the way up to 4 inches. Plus it has the curve if you're doing something that has a curved edge to it. Ruler. My favorite ruler is for this especially, is Quick Trim Creative Grids ruler, because it does have the ability to make circles, and we'll be making those circles in another class. Oh, hi Lynn. Hi Cindy. How's everyone doing? All shoveled out? Everybody all shoveled out? And we're about ready to start. So this is the napkin that we're making, and this is closed up, and I made it so you can just put the utensils. I call it silverware, but I'm sure it isn't any silver in it. So utensils, your fork and spoon, whatever. And so I put a button on it to keep it closed, so when it sits on the table, it'd be like that, or however you want it to be. Originally, I just wanted a loop for so Caspian, I could just hang a few of them, and he could just pick one because he's like I'm not using a napkin twice. So you could also, if you put the button on the other side, you could loop it around your oven door handle, because it hangs. See how nicely it hangs? It hangs like, I know you can't see the whole thing, but so it's kind of cute. So this is what we're making today. Mitered corners, and don't cry, don't be upset, they'll be easy. Okay, so we're gonna stitch around all the 4 sides and put a button on and make our loop, and then we'll be done for the day. So let me set this aside. So this loop, before I forget, this loop is 2 inches wide. So I have some, and if you're going to do a big button, then you might want the bigger loop. And I have probably more loop than I need, but it works. So I'm going to use a smaller button. So I'm going to do a skinnier loop. So I cut my loop 1.5. So let me hang this napkin somewhere where I can find it again. Okay. So we might as well just go ahead and make our loop first. And that way me and you, we can try out our stitch in the ditch foot to see if we like it to do the napkin. We'll do it first on our loop. And I seem to have a crease there. Okay, so I did 1.5 by 6. I always do 6 or 7 or whatever, because I can always make it smaller, I can't make it bigger. So the first thing we're going to do is just fold it right in half. And press it, because we need to see that crease in the middle. And then I was just waiting for it to cool a second. And then open it up, and we're going to fold the edge into the middle. And I find this easier for me to just finger press than try to iron. You can go ahead and iron yours. I'm going to iron it after I'm done. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Bring this side in. So now both the raw edges are in the center where that crease, the first crease we made was. Now I'm going to fold it in half and press it. And you'll probably be using your big iron, because your big iron is heavier and probably more steamy. This one's a little steamy, but not steamy like my regular iron is. And I just want to make sure, it's hot though, I can tell you that. I just want to make sure, you ever, put something hot in your mouth and you wish you hadn't? That's how I feel about this. So we want to make sure that our folds match. So like, see, when I open it up, there's the fold is here and the fold is here. And I'm just going to close it up and make sure that both of those folds line up. If it's not perfect, it's okay, because one side will be the inside, one side will be the outside. But don't aim for not perfect. Aim for perfect, and then if you got to settle for a little less, it's okay. But if you start out thinking, oh, I don't have to make this perfect, then it'll really be off. So what we need to do is we're going to sew down each side, but we're going to sew down like we've done on our bags. We're going to sew down on the side that's open with the 2 folds first. So I'm going to move my button foot out of the way. And I did a different camera setup. I'm hoping this works out better, because I can get in here now without my hand like being totally in the way, hopefully. Okay, so we're going to take our regular foot off and put our J foot on. Can't tell if I was threaded or not, so we'll thread. Oh, we'll thread again. Okay, so what we want to look at, and I'm not sure if I can get in close enough for you to see, but we'll try. See how close I can get, still stay in focus. If you look at your foot, can you see? Get a pointer. Where the hole is, and get Fred's in the way. Who could have thought Fred would be in the way? Here's the hole right here. And it's kind of a oval hole, which means we can move the needle left and right a little bit. Well, I want to move my needle way over to the left because when I put this down, I'm putting it to the left of this guide. So you have to pardon my hands for just a minute. So you see the guide is right there. And then my fabric is right against it. So if I had my needle in the middle, it would miss my fabric or barely catch it. So I need to move my needle to the left. Okay, I'm gonna back the camera up because I'll show my screen, and maybe that'll help you with your screen. So bear with me. I'm gonna back up a little, and I'm gonna kind of hold this. See if I can get to. Okay, let me shut this light out. See if that helps a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to have my regular straight stitch, and there we go. Hold on. Okay, I have left and right shift, LR shift. If you have a smaller baby lot, if you look up, maybe up here, you might have a button for where you go for the size of your length of your stitches and width of your stitches. And that left-right shift, depending on the model, would be there. But it's going to say LR shift. And what that means, it's going to move the needle left or right, however I want to go. And I want to go left, so it's down. Oops, sorry. So it's down. I'm looking at my needle at the same time. And I think it's going to be 2.0. So it's plus 2.0. Okay? Now bear with me because I got to put the camera back again. And I'm trying to do it slowly so nobody gets seasick. And hold on, I got to turn the tripod so that it doesn't fall off the table. Okay. And I'm trying to come over as far left to that hole as I can. But I'm not going to just step on my pedal and hope for the best. Whenever I shift my needle, I'm going to use my hand wheel. And if you don't know where your hand wheel is, way over on the right side, on the real right side of your machine. And let me make sure the light's okay. And I'm going to turn my wheel, and I can see the needle going into my fabric. And it's not, let's see if I can get a little closer. Give me a second for a little, it might be too close. Sometimes when I'm too close, it won't focus. And there we go. That's pretty focused. So I'm watching my needle come down and make sure it doesn't hit the metal of my foot. There's no machine that knows, in the case of these snap-on feet, that knows what foot you have on there. So, don't get mad at your machine for not knowing. If it's a plug-in foot, it'll know. But if it's not, there's no way for it to know. So if I put this needle way over left onto the metal, the machine's not going to say, hey, stop it. It doesn't know that. So this is up to you to get this right. So if you just hand wheel a couple of times, and your hand wheel always goes forward, Okay, and I've got my fabric under there just as if I was stitching. And I know I'm going to be fine because it didn't hit anything. If it hit, you know, as you come down, you would hit the metal, and obviously you'd stop and make sure you pick your needle back up before you move it back to the right. So if you're moving your needle left or right, whichever, make sure the needle's up, not down in the hole, because it can't move when it's down in the hole properly. Okay? So if you've got your stitch in the ditch foot or edge joining foot, you can give that a try. So, and I'm going to show you just how close to the edge I can get, but not only am I close to the edge, but it should be the same distance the whole way, because my fabric, my loop, is, my eye is keeping my fabric on that guide. That's my job. Okay, so let's see. I got to pick a piece of fabric where you can see it. And just, it'll take a second to adjust. There we go. Look how close to the edge it is. But it's the same distance the whole way. Well, now don't I look like a professional stitcher? And it's all because I had the right foot on there. Can you see it okay? Yeah, I think right there is good. Okay, so now I'm just going to go down the other side. I can't reach my foot down button. There we go. Okay, so I've always fabric underneath the needle and a little ways back. That's why I have extra loop. I don't want to start at the very edge and have issues with the fabric getting caught or jammed up. I'm trying to make sure that my hand is blurring things up. So let me go back a little, let me back up a little bit and see if I can get. I think that looks pretty good for the focus. If it's a little off, I apologize. Okay, so I'm not looking at the needle. I'm looking at the guide in the front. If I'm looking at the needle, I keep telling you, if you look at the needle, it's too late. It's too late. So let's take a look at that. Let me get you in the right light here. Trying to get you to an area that it shows on. Can you see it on both ends? You can see it right along there. Okay, so that gets you close to the edge, but more importantly, it's nice and straight. So if you want to use your edge joining foot for your napkin, you can do that. I'm going to go back, because probably some of you don't, edge joining, or I'm sorry, the stitch in the ditch. But I'm going to go back and put my J foot on. So doing the napkin for those of you that don't have that extra foot. And trying to put your foot on with the thread in the way. Here we go. Isn't helpful. But I want to make sure I put my machine back to my regular stitch. So I'm just going to hit reset. There's a button that says reset. I'm just going to hit that reset button to get back to my regular settings. I'm doing two things here at once. I'm trying to make that. Here we go. I think we're good there. Okay. So back to our work table. So did anybody have any questions on that? So we've got our loop done. It's extra long, or at least it should be long enough for what we need. Got a little extra thread. So now we're going to work on our napkin. Our napkin, you can make it 20 by 20, 22 by 22, whatever you want. We're going to lose 2 inches of it because we're going to use an inch hem on each side. I picked the 18 by 18 cut because that's a fat quarter, and so many people have fat quarters. It just takes one. So let me move those buttons out of the way. And I'll put the feet with the buttons. And today I'm going to use, this will make you laugh. So I'm not using my friction pens today because the fabric I use, it won't show. So this is the chalk pencil that came with my machine. And it's got this brush that is like, if you brushed on your face with this, you'd probably be bleeding. It's very stiff. I mean, like way stiffer than a toothbrush. So I'm using that. But for right now, I'm going to use my hem guide. Try to get everybody out of the way because we're going to be on the right side down because we need to hem. And our hem is just like this. And you notice this is a clean edge. This isn't a raw edge. So it's folded twice. Now the way I do this one is, and if you don't want to just watch for a minute, I'm going to fold it over an inch. Now don't get nervous. I'm not going to like fold it an inch and then another inch. But I'm going to fold it an inch, and I'm pushing my what do I call it? My hem gauge, I guess. I'm pushing that against this fold and bringing the fabric up. And I'm going to press that. And remember, it's metal, so it's going to get hot. And as I'm going down, I'm making sure that I'm pushing my hem gauge towards that fold, because if I could be anywhere under this fold, I can't tell. And so I could be at an inch, and I'm really, I don't know, or a half, I guess I could be at an inch, but have more than an inch of fabric if I didn't push this against that fold. Okay, so, and you'll have, I don't know, I'm moving things 12 times here. Okay, I need to stretch this up. I'm going to come down to the other end and do the same thing. So what I do is I roll this up and then I push it back until I'm on the 1 inch. And I want to make sure that when I do this end, I'm not crooked. So before I iron, I want to make sure that I've got 1 inch the whole way and that my gauge is pressed right up against this fold. It's kind of awkward at first. I was making sure someone wasn't telling me they couldn't hear me. It's kind of awkward at first, but you get used to it. And you just take your time. I think half the problem we have is we try to rush and then things don't work well. Let's just take our time. And then I'm just going to come to the middle just to make sure, because I think it pretty well covered the whole thing, but I'm just going to come to the middle and press again. And then once it's pressed, I can take my metal gauge out of the way. And this is going to work better if you press up and down than if you slide back and forth. Oh, my little iron did some steam. That's pretty exciting. Ooh. Okay, and I'm just going to let that cool for a second. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open this up, and we're going to do a 1/2 inch, or well, let's say a 1/2 inch. 1/4 inch is a little hard. So if I go a 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to fold on the fold. Now I think we'll do 1/4, and I know I just said it's harder. But let's try to do a 1/4 or a little less than half, because what's going to happen is we're going to fold this under and press it, and then we're going to fold where we originally pressed. And see now how we've got a nice clean edge. But this one still has to be straight. So if you can eyeball it, that's good. So I don't have a 1/4 inch, But I do have all these marks here with the numbers, the centimeters, or whatever. And so I'm going to pick, and you see how I've got this edge of all little lines. I'm going to go right just a little past that. And the nice thing with the hem gauge is it's covering over our other crease that we made, so we won't uncrease it. So I'm going to say that's a good healthy 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to go to the other end. I like to go to both ends and then make the middle. Then the middle will work fine. I don't want to keep going and all of a sudden I'm veering off the road. I just want to make sure that I stay in the same spot on my gauge. Then I'll make sure my center is good. And then I'm going to press this one, but I'm going to make sure I stay away from my other crease. I don't want to go through all that work and press the crease out. I find that for me, it's easier to do that 1 inch one first and then come in and do this smaller one that's going to tuck inside of the first one than to do this one and then the second one. So you can do it either way. And I'm lifting my iron as I'm going down the hem. Okay, I'm going to go to the opposite side only because this is hot. So I'm just going to turn around to the opposite side and I'm going to do the same thing again. So this time I'll try to do less talking, and so you can just follow along. So we're doing, remember, 1 inch first. So I come up. I know I said I'd do less talking, I haven't stopped. So I'm at like the 1.5, but I know my ruler is against that, my gauge. And then if I push it back, so I'm pushing my hem gauge, I'm going to push it back until it gets to 1 inch. Then I know that my fold is right on my hem gauge. And you might as well learn to use a hem gauge because, you know, there's lots of things that you're going to be able to do with it. Going to the other end. And I have to look, and I can see, and I think you can see it. Can you see right here? There's like a little bow. I'm not going straight across. Yeah, can you see it right? I'm trying to hold this. Oh, wait a minute. Let me iron this down. Because you're going to do this. This is going to happen. Okay, so if you look right here, there's a little bow. Let me hold both ends. That just means I didn't cut my fabric right. But because I'm straight here and all the way to here, that little blip I got my little bow is okay because this is going to lay flat and get the right 1 inch for the rest of it. If it has a fold or a crease or a bubble in it, then it's not a wrong cut. It's just the way you have the fabric. Hopefully that will make sense. Okay, and then we're just gonna, okay, we're getting there. Just go in the chat if you have any questions, or you need to see something again. I'm just going to do the exact same thing I did on the other side. I'm going to open this up, and then I'm going to go the exact same place on my hem gauge that I went to. Whatever place you went to, you're going to go this exact same distance on this side. And the reason that's important is because when we stitch, we're stitching from the wrong side, and we want the stitching on the right side to be even all the way around. And I'm going to go a little further here. And again, I'm coming to the other end. I gotta move over a little bit because my hand is a little too close to my. Just want to make sure you can still see okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the middle. So when I do the middle, it should automatically line up to what I've already done on the top end. And then I'm going to fold it back to the original fold. Okay, so I'm now going to come around to we got two sides done, top and bottom now. I've turned it so the top and bottom are hemmed, and now we got the left and right to do, or right and left to do. And we're gonna, the fold that's there is gonna be in our fold. So I wanna make sure those are nice and pressed down. So the same thing, 1 inch. I had a little piece of cardboard, so let me try this on your behalf. Need a regular ruler. Let's see if this were, I know it's cardboard, so it's paper and iron. I get all that, but let's try this, just in case you don't have something to hem with. So I marked 1 inch. Let me mark it deeper. And I don't want to use my friction pen here either, because what happens when the heat hits the friction pen? No more mark. Okay, so I marked it at 1 inch. Okay, so let's give this a whirl. And remember, it's cardboard. Remember, heat, cardboard, paper. Okay, so I'm going to flip this over so it comes up to that line I drew. Now it's a little thicker than my seam gauge, because this metal is like, I don't know if you can see the difference. Not too bad, but a little bit. But whatever you use the same, keep using the same thing. It doesn't heat up like my metal one does. But it seems to work. I'm sure with the steam that, your cardboard isn't going to last forever. But this came off the bottom of a charm pack, 5-inch squares. But it worked. And now I'm going to draw a line. So I said a little more than a quarter. And hold on, I'll get into focus. And I know I'm halfway through that thought. But, oh, wait a minute, let me do this. Here we go. So here's my 1 inch. I want to come in just a little more than a quarter. So see how I got, I know it's a little fainter for you to see. There we go. Okay, so my first turn, and then my second turn. 1 inch, a little more than a quarter. So let me go back and finish my thought, which was pressing this first inch down. Okay. And we'll open it up just like we did before. Hi, Christine. You're out shopping, buying Christmas presents? Did I miss much? I don't know. Maybe. Now I'm looking at this, and I didn't pay attention before, but this line I drew, if I drew it in a little more, can actually line up with that fold. So let's see what happens if I line it up with the fold. Of course, it's going to come over more. So no, that one, I think that's too big. But I can keep that fold between these two lines. So that'll help you stay straight also. But, it's always nice to have more than one tool to keep you on the straight and narrow. I think you could cut up like cereal boxes, but it's not giving me as crisp a seam. So let me just see if that's me or the cardboard, because the metal will give you a really crisp seam. I'm not seam, crease. Sorry. And I think if I go back as I'm going along, let me get down to the other end. And now I'm going to leave my iron on and just pull that out. Okay, so that will work. So if you don't have a hem gauge, piece of cardboard will do the trick. Maybe later on you'll get a regular hem gauge, but that'll work for now if you don't have anything else. Okay, so one last side. So remember, 1 inch first. And it's not your prom dress, it's just a napkin. So the first few you make for yourself, and then once you get the practice in, then you can make them for gifts. And remember, the people you give them to aren't as fussy as you are. Well, they better not be. I wouldn't use too big a piece of cardboard, though I suppose you could get one that goes the whole way, but just be careful with that if it's too much to keep track of at one time. I think it might be. So 1 inch is done. Now I'm doing the other part. And you really want to work at not losing that original 1 inch, because you can't fold that 1 inch again without unfolding this part. So if you tend to lose that first inch crease, then do this little one first, but you're going to have to keep track of how much you turn this under to make sure you get the inch. And that's why I do it the other way around. Oh, I put my seam gauge up on my computer and it switched my camera. What was the chances of that happening? Good thing I looked up. And remember, your edges should be even. So if your edges aren't even, your fold's not right. But don't fuss with it too much, because we're going to be cutting these ends off anyway. So let me put the iron up here. And I've got to move everything that can melt. Put that there. Okay, so now the next part, let's see if I can come in a little more. Let me text. Okay, someone was having an issue getting in, only they're really already in. So, oh, and then I got a never mind. I should have known. Okie doke. Okay, so now we got to do our miters. So let me see if I can come in a little bit more. And pardon me, I'm going to tilt down. And come in a little more. And let's see if I can get right there. There we are. How's that? Is that in pretty good? I'm just going to wait a second while everybody gets their ironing done. Have a sip of tea. Okay, so I'm gonna use, I like to use this ruler, and there we go, because I want to use this, so it's 45 this way, and it's 45 this way. Now, normally when I use this ruler, I want to cut a 1/4 inch from this edge, which I could do, except I want to draw a line where I'm going to stitch. So I want to line it up so that the edge of my ruler is in the proper place to draw the line. And you'll see it in a minute. So we're going to open this up. And let me just open it so hopefully you can see. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my ruler and I'm going to line up so I at least get kind of situated where I need to be. Now what we're looking at is, let me come this way a little more. Okay, so here's our first little square. Do you see right here? This is the first place. That's our inside hem where the two folds, one from each side, cross. We don't want that one. We want the big one. So now do you see this big box right here? That's what you want to look for. Oh, you know, I marked my, marking on your, I need something a little harder to mark on. So I picked this to mark on, thinking I'm marking here. So let me get back my friction pen, see if I can find one that will, you'll see. Oh yeah, you can see that. So give me 1 second. Okay, so see how I drew that box around there? We're going to keep an eye on this point. Okay, so here's the little box right here. Here's that bigger box. And no, it's probably not an actual square, so I'm just going to call it a box. You see it right here? So see how I'm in the distance of that little fold. I'm in the distance of the little fold. Okay? Little box, the big box. What we're looking for is where that box meets this corner. See that corner right there? So let me see if I can mark it enough. I don't want to have so many marks you won't know what marks to watch, but can you see my little mark going here and here? You don't need to do all that marking. I'm just trying to get it so you can see it. Okay? Oh, my machine light went up. What I'm going to do is, okay, oh, you can see that. So you can see those white lines really well. So what I want is, I'm going to get the white lines, this last fold or last crease that I made. Here's my big box up here. So right here is the bottom of the big box, right here where this little white triangle is. And these white lines are following the 1 inch crease. Once I have that lined up so they're going in the same direction, I want to pull my ruler back because I need my ruler, I need to draw the line right at the bottom of that big box. But by lining up my ruler with the creases, now my eyeball can see the creases. I want to be the same distance with this white line to this crease as this white line to this crease. Does that make sense? I have to stand up over it. So I don't want to be like a 1/4 inch here, an 1/8 of an inch here. And I also want to make sure that white line follows along my crease evenly. So I don't want it to be like a 1/4 inch here and an 1/8 of an inch down here. So I have to have some kind of reference point. But the end of my ruler, this part of my ruler, should be right at the bottom of that box. Remember, the bottom of the box and the crease of the corner are right together. Okay? And then I'm going to draw a line across. So if you're on your mat, let me get my mat so maybe that will also help you. Okay, so if I put my ruler on and I get it where it needs to be, I should have the same distance on this side as I do on this side. So I have about 2 1/4. Okay, so see, 1, 2 1/4, oh, 1/4. And if I look here, 1, 2. Oh, let me move my mat up a little more. Okay, 1, 2, and about 1/4. So I want to make sure they're about the same. So this little triangle should be the same on these two sides. And then I'm going to draw a line across. And I'm really going to draw it so you can see it. Oh, there you go. You see that? So it's coming right across where that bottom of that box and this corner meet. Does that make sense? Hopefully all the other lines don't throw you off. Okay, so I'm just going to wait a second to make sure that everybody's got their line drawn. So here's that little box. Remember? Little box, the bigger box. The line's coming right across and it touches this fold and this fold, crease. That's the 1 inch crease. This line is coming right across there. Okay? And I'm going to leave this in the close-up because we're gonna sew this first, and then we'll go ahead and do the other corners. But I want you to see why we're doing this, and that'll help you a little bit. It's actually our miter. So we're going to fold our napkin in half. And here's what's really important. We need to keep the little fold folded. Don't open it all the way up and stitch across, because we're going to be stitching right across this line. Okay? If I leave this little fold open and stitch across, when I go to turn it to the other side, it can't close up because this little fold's in the way. So that fold needs to be folded. And it doesn't matter if it's perfect up at this end, because we're going to cut it off anyway. We just want to make sure that we're folded on both sides. See how it's folded on both sides? here's my line, and I know I can't see it here, but you could draw it out if you wanted to, because this line should be in the same place as this line. Oops, see it right there? Okay, so if you need to finish, because that fold is in the way of your mark, so if you need to draw it out all the way, see how it goes all the way across? It should match with the other side. So let me turn it over, because when you first do this a couple times, you might want to extend that line. Okay, so see how I extended the line. Wasn't the best extend. So the two lines should meet. So if I took a pin and lay this down flat, if I take a pin and stick it in that line and pull my fabric up, it should be, there it is, on the same line on the other side. Then you know it's right. Okay? Now if you need to pin that, go ahead. It's really not much fabric to pin, but I know you guys like to pin sometimes. I'm trying to move this ruler again so it doesn't hit my mat. So now, and I'm going to try to remember to keep checking to make sure we're in focus with each other. There we go. Now we're going to stitch across here. So we're going to stitch, and we want to lock it. So we're going to stitch in, unless you have lock in place and go, lock in place. Otherwise, you want to stitch in a couple back and go, and then back. So we need to lock the stitches. So if you see see where the line is? Right there, right along there. Okay? And I'm gonna go from the folded side so that I don't have to worry about my presser foot or my feed dogs pushing this back when I'm coming along. So I'm going to stitch from this end across, locking and locking. Okay? So let me switch over. Here we go. Okay? So I want to make sure it's nice and flat here. And just trying to find my lever for, oh look, I'm magnified there. Reflection. Okay, I want to make sure on my foot there's a little line in the center of my foot, not up here, but back here. And I want that line on my line that I just drew. So I'm just going to take a couple stitches. Okay, I'm going to do my locking stitch. I'm going to take that pin out. Remember, I'm on my pivot feature, so my needle is in the fabric and my foot's up. So my needle in the fabric is my third hand. And then I'm just going to stitch to the other end. And I'm not going to lock at this edge. I'm going to go back. Oh, let me get my finger out of your way. And you'd be holding your fabric. I don't have enough hands here right now. Okay? So we did that little, well, I'll show you on the other camera. We did that little stitching right on the line we drew. Okay, so the stitching is right there and it's right on that line. Okay? Now, you want a pair of scissors. I had mine, oh, I was going to say I had mine a minute ago. So we want a pair of scissors. Now this is going to seem odd, so let me do mine first, and then you'll do yours. So I gotta take my glasses off to see up this close. Okay. So I'm trying to make sure the light's okay. So we have this kind of, you know, the old days when you're a kid, you made a paper hat. Okay, so here's my stitch line right here. So I'm looking at that, and what I want to end up having is I want to have an equilateral triangle. And I'm gonna let me do the full cut or the 2 cuts, and then you can decide how you want to do yours. So if I'm gonna come to where the line is, and my line of stitching, and I'm gonna be just above it, and I'm gonna cut on that angle, maybe. So that I have an equal triangle here. And then I'm going to cut this off to a small, like 1/8 seam allowance. And now I'm going to tell you why I did that. And so you can do it either way, and you can do it before or after. When I made that first cut to make an equilateral triangle, what I did is I made this little angle cut. Oh, sorry. Where's my cardboard? There we go. Can you see? I made that little angle cut. So see how this is an angle cut? I wanted this to be an angle cut. And so if I cut and make that sticking out piece an equilateral triangle close there too, this automatically goes on that angle. If that's too hard for you, then cut across, but you've got to come back and cut this angle without cutting that thread. So whichever way works for you, okay? So you notice, remember, these are folded, okay? So let me back up just a little bit with the camera. Okay, so I don't know if you can see it better further away or not. Okay, so now I need my turning tool. So that just made our mitered corner. So if we turn it right side out, and then flatten it out, look, there's our miter. You see it? Now we should, it's easier if you press this seam, this little bitty seam, open. Just finger press that open. It just makes it a little flatter. But when it gets up to the corner, because of the angle we cut, that little seam allowance will be angled as well. Okay, and we would and we'll give that a little press. Make sure you have the corner poked all the way out. And you'll know because see how that lies flat? So when I didn't have it poked all the way out, this was kind of off kilter. So you'll know when the little corner's poked out well. There you go. There's our little mitered, and it's perfectly even here. Okay? So now we've got 3 more corners to do that on. So normally you would do all 4 corners and then sew, but sometimes when I'm trying something new, I like to finish one and then go to the other 3 because if I do one and then it makes more sense to me, it's just easier to do. All right, so let me move this aside. Oop, almost lost that. Okay, so I'm going to do this right here again. So we're opening up the corner. We're looking for, and I'll make a mark again. We're looking for that big box. Remember, little one, the bigger one, and the bigger one. Here, let me hold that down. I need an extra hand here. the bigger box, the bottom of the bigger box will be even with that our 1-inch crease. And where the 1-inch crease is in that box meet is where we're drawing our line. Okay, so if you find that bigger box as your anchor point, then you should be okay. And then, let's see, I guess when I was in closer, it showed better. Let's see if I can move over to where you are. So see my white lines again. I brought them right into the corner. So the white line here and here are at the bottom of the box, which makes these longer white lines in line with our 1-inch crease. Then I want to make sure I come back with the ruler, so the edge of the ruler is at the bottom of this box, which is the top of the 1-inch crease. And I want to check to make sure I have an equal distance on all sides. And I'm using my white lines in my crease. Oh, my pen. I was going to cut it. See, that would have been bad. You don't want to cut here because this is where your seam goes. I'm drawing the line right where we're going to stitch. See it? Now that's a dark line. So that's our stitching line. See, here's our box. Little box, bigger box. Here's our crease, 1-inch crease, here it is. And that line goes straight across that. Okay, so let's do the 3 sides. Oh, thanks, Christy. It does make a nice corner. So if it's easier for you, like I said, find that big square just to give your eye a place to anchor. And if you're using this ruler, which I find is probably the handiest ruler I own, I'm just going to take, so you can see the little white lines. That's at the bottom of that box. But if now I could cut here and then do a 1/4-inch seam, but I find for this, it's easier if you sew on the line. So I'm going to bring it back so that the edge of my ruler is at the, see, there's the box, it's at the bottom of the box. I want to make sure it's even on each side with my creases. And in this case, once I move the ruler back, and I mean back like that direction, back away from this edge, these lines aren't going to be on the crease, they're going to be below the crease. I just have to have them equal distance below on each side. You know, I'm losing my creases, so I'm going to move this for a minute. And I'm going to re-crease myself. Well, my napkin. So that with this particular fabric, it was getting hard to see it. So to just take a minute and get those creases in good again so you can see them. Oh, hot, hot, hot. And of course I use the friction pen, so my little box measurement is gone. And I just put this cardboard under because marking on my pressing mat, because it's spongy, isn't going to work well. Okay, so here's my box so you can see it. See, there's my box. My ruler needs to be at the end of that. I'll be darned if I can. There we go. And I could tell I was off because I had more fabric on this side and less on that side. And remember, if you have your mat, you can count over. Okay, draw my line across. One more. And before I even open this up, I'm just going to press it again. Depends on the fabric, how easy it is to see your, oh, I was going to use my cardboard, how easy it is to see the lines, your crease lines. Okay, there's the bottom of my bottle. Oh. Gonna follow my own directions here. The pen quit working there for a minute. There we go. I made there's my little, so remember, little box, big box, and then right here, and if I need to, I can draw a line where those creases are, just in case I can't see them. See how now I can see them. Okay, bring my ruler up, and I'm lining it up here and on my creases, and then I'm just going to move away from this edge so that the edge of my ruler is at the bottom of that box. Okay, so the marking is done. Get some stuff out of the way. Let's move this back a little bit. Here we go. Okay, so now you can get out 3 pins, and we can get all of these corners ready and then go sew. So we're folding it on the angle. Let me see, which way did I fold it? This way last time. Oh, this way. So remember, we need to make sure that those first folds, the little folds, stay folded. Okay, so if you want to get them folded and put your pin here, that's fine. And if you want to mark across the whole way, you can. We just want to make sure they line up. Now I can see, and I'm just going to see how this turns out, but I can see that I pressed under more on this one than I did on this one. And that will throw, I noticed it when I was doing my line, that'll throw that box off a little bit. So I'm going to do mine like the real world, and it's a little crooked. Okay, and I'm gonna leave that because I want to see if it's a little off, if it's still going to be okay. Okay, so let's get the rest of our corners done. So we're putting right sides together. So see how we look this way. Here's our end right here. Make sure our folds are still folded. Just the first fold, just the little fold, not the second fold. I almost had both my folds folded. Okay, I'm not concerned about what's going on up here. Doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to get cut off. So it can misbehave all it wants. So I want to make sure that my line and my line are matched up. And again, you can draw it all the way out, stick the pin in it. So see if I stick the pin in and it comes out on the line on the other side. And if it doesn't, adjust it. Okay, so I'm sticking the pin in. It's easier to stick the pin in while the fabric's flat. Just pull the fabric up. And then see, we're on the line on the other side. So I'm just going to pinch this when I take that pin out and pin. And got one more. And we got to put our loop on before we stitch. Before we stitch our last stitching around. Not this one, but we just got to keep remembering. Loop, got to put the loop in. Yeah. It's not going in yet, but it's going in before we do our final stitching. Okay, first fold, line the folds up. Make sure the lines are lined up. I'm just pinching it to hold it and putting a pin in. So now we're going to go over and we're going to stitch our remaining 3/4, or if you didn't do your first corner yet, all 4 corners. And remember, we're going to lock the stitches in the beginning and end. Oh, sorry, not bump the camera. You have to pardon my hand for just a minute. And I want to line up. Remember, if you have the J foot, there's a little notch just past this plastic piece at the end, just before the hole where the needle goes. And that middle line lines up with the needle when it's in the center. Remember, we're in the center. Okay, so I'm going to just stitch in one so I know I'm okay on the fabric. I'm going to lock it in place. I can take my pin out. And my eye is on the line, watching the line line up with the line of the foot. Okay, at the end, I'm going to go back 3 to lock it. Okay, and then let's find another end. And if these folded edges are lined up right, this fabric lays nice and flat. So if it's not laying flat, make sure it is before you start stitching. Oh, every time I hit that button, sorry. Every time I hit the button, I hit the leg of the camera. We okay? We good? Okay. I got fabric under my needle, and I've lined my drawn line up with that little line of the foot. I'm going to take a stitch, make sure I'm on my fabric okay. I don't want to be locking my stitch out in midair. My eye's on the line, not on my needle. And one more. Look for the guy with the pin in him. So before I put my napkin under here, I wanted to make sure it was nice and flat. And it's all lined up coming down here. Find my little drawn line. And I wasn't quite on the fabric. Now I am. So I'm just going to take one stitch and then lock my stitches. Take my pin out. And keep my eye on the line. back 3 or 4. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions before we go on to the next part or go too far. Okay, I'm just going to stick that up over there. So remember our square and our square. So we have this big ugly piece here. Here's my stitching. I'm coming in so that my scissor is right above by I don't know, by what would be about the 2 widths of the thread. But if you think of trying to make this angle match this angle. So see how now I have a nice, well, close to a, what is that, is it unilateral? Equilateral, I'm sorry, equilateral. And then I'm gonna, now, if you want to, before you make this cut, open this up. And press, because that'll press that seam open. And then to me it's easier just to cut each one separate. Then see how that's nice and flat already for me? I don't know where that piece went. There it is. And then turn it right side out. And when you turn it right side out, if you've got that corner pushed out enough, this will lay nice and flat. Or close to flat. I mean, it's not going to be perfect. But now it is. And if I didn't push that corner, I just got to give it a little more push. Okay? And I've got this right here so I don't forget to put it on. Okay? And this is how I would do it. I would trim one, press it, turn it right side out. I would finish off each corner as I go. And I think it's easier to press that seam allowance open before we do the final trim. And then I don't need to put them back together. It doesn't matter if they're exactly equal. And then turn it right side out. And I have one more. Just press that seam. So I press the seam open. There's one side, there's the other. I'm just going to cut and cut. So see, there's my 2 little seam allowances. When we cut that first little equilateral triangle, it keeps the extra fabric out of that corner when you angle in with your cut. It keeps the fabric and the seam allowance out of that corner, or the fabric of the seam allowance. Okay, now before we forget, we got to put our loop on. So if we look at our finished one, it's going in the corner. So it's really on the back of the napkin. And what we want to do is I make it like this. So these are, I guess we can cross them over. I had made them side by side, but we can cross them over. But you see how that sits up like that with this cross? If we turn it over, because it depends how you look at it. So if I put it this way, when it hangs up, to me it's backwards. Because this is a different kind of loop. Usually we're making a loop and then it gets to turn up and go, yeah, that the other way, but from the right, it would normally be on the right side. We're on the wrong side. So when I just set it down and then I put this up because this is how it'd be hanging. So where you've crossed it over, all right, so let me see if I can see the difference, so if you can see the difference. So this is how I would have it facing up. You see the difference? So to me, this looks like the right side, and this looks like the wrong side. Can you see that? Does that make sense? So I want right side facing up. Now, I can go over to the sewing machine and just stitch across. You know how we stitch across just to hold it so it doesn't get out of control? So we got to decide how long a loop we want. And I'm gonna, I was just looking for my ruler. In case you're wondering how long mine is. So right now mine is not quite 3 inches long, which would be right if it was 6 inches. So I've got it crossed over and I'm gonna stitch it. I'm gonna stitch a half inch up from this edge. So I want to make sure it's crossed over a half inch up from this edge, and I'm just going to stitch across, quickly stitch across. And that's just to hold it still. Okay, so I stitched right here. And I'm going to trim some of this off. So I'm about, here's my stitching right here. 1/8 of an inch. I bet you didn't know you were going to know 1/8 of an inch and 1/16 of an inch and all that. Equilateral triangles. And then I'm going to just lift this up and put that in my corner. I'm not going to go up into the corner. I'm just going to go in, you know what I mean? Because it's my fabric, so my fabric will be this way, inside. I can't jam that up in the corner. I'll make a big mess. So inside, and you see where I am? Right there. So just get it in. Would help if I remembered which way. So this, okay, so this is, to me, this is the right side, that's the wrong side. So I want right side up and just put it in that corner. And if I need to, there's my pins, I can pin it right there. So it's up in that corner because I'm going to be stitching across right here, right near that fold. Okay? So we're ready to stitch. I'm going to back this up again. Okay, so get some more stuff out of the way here. Now, if you need to go around and press one more time, just because we've been handling it, just to make sure everything's nice and flat, There's really absolutely no reason to pin. I know I can't see you, so you could pin to your heart's delight, but it isn't necessary. And I'll say that with the caveat of depends on what fabric you're using. If you were doing a linen or something, you may have to, I would clip it probably and pin it, because I wouldn't want marks in it, marks in the linen. So if any of you cornered, now I don't even know, I can't tell which one of these corners was that bad corner, because they're all matching equally. Remember I had that one corner that I told you on one side the fabric was less, because it's the underneath fabric, not the underneath fold, not this fold. Okay, so we don't want to start at a corner. You never start the corner. So, and I don't want to start in the middle because everybody looks to the middle. So I'm just going to come down here about 4 inches before the corner. Okay, and I'm not going to lock it because I'm going to go all the way around, and then I'm going to come across just a 1/2 inch or so across my regular stitching, and then I'll lock it. I don't need to have 2 locks right there together. Okay, so here we go. Is everybody ready to stitch? I didn't ask, is anybody stitching along today? Okay, so I'm gonna move my iron. So I don't want anything in the way behind me, beside me, or wherever the case may be. Now, we obviously always have less fabric over here. So my edge that I'm paying attention to, I'm usually looking on my right. Now it's going to be on my left. So if you have the J foot on, now you can use your edge joining or your stitch in the ditch like we did before, but I'm going to use my J foot. And I'm going to, if you look at your J foot, the plastic, there's a little gap right here between this metal piece and this plastic piece. I'm running the edge of my fabric to the edge of the plastic piece. Hopefully that makes sense. So if you take a minute to look at your foot and you have the J foot on, the metal, this metal little ski right here, there's one on each side. This left one is not attached to the plastic. It's where you put your thread through. So I'm going to use the edge of this little plastic part right here, is lined up with the edge of my hem. And that's what I'm going to use. So my eyeball, and let me see if I need to move my needle over. I'll go there. I could do left shift like we did before, but I'm going to just leave it right where it is. Oh, and where did I end up? I'm right at my loop first thing. Well, I might as well get that out of the way. It doesn't sew any different than the rest of it. So my eye is going to be out here at the edge of my foot, watching this hem fold line up with the plastic part of my foot. You ready? And I've got one hand here because it's the end of my napkin. And I have this hand. This hand is not here to pull fabric. It's just here so I don't do one of these kind of things along the way. It's just to keep everybody on the straight and narrow. Okay, we ready? Let's go. Okay, I've got to move my pin out just a little bit, so I'm just going to take it out. And you notice I held on to my loop when I took it out. And I'm going to hang on to my loop right now. I need to come down far enough so that I'm ready to turn and go the other way. So I have to get past the little miter seam just a little bit. and I'm going to stop. I have my pivot on. If you don't have pivot, put your needle down and your foot up, and then turn and see if you're lined up. If you're not lined up, you need to take another stitch, take another stitch. If you took too many, then just raise your needle up, move your fabric over, and then start. And see, my loop has already been stitched. So do I want to stitch that loop a little more? I could. So if I go back this way, I could stitch it a little more if I'm concerned on the wear and tear, or I could stitch it after. But if I'm right here, I can go back, and I'm just going to hang on to make sure I'm okay. Oh, yeah, my finger's in the way. And just go back and forth again. I think I'll be lucky enough to land in the good spot. Oh, I did. Okay. So I've gone down and back and down again on that part of the loop. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to stitch until I get to the end of the loop. And then I'm going to stitch back. I'm trying to do this without my finger being in your way. And I want to make sure I stitch back. So if I'm not sure if I'm going to stitch back properly, I can turn it, because then I can see my stitches where I stitched. And I can go back over my stitches and then turn it and go back and go forward again. That's much easier than guessing when you're going backwards. But remember, get your eye on wherever you're aligning with. Make sure everything out here and here is nice and flat. I've got my hand, you know how I put my hand when I'm holding my fabric. Trying to remember, it's the last 2 videos or so I gave you a little more in-depth, because I'm a little short of showing you in the camera. So I'm getting ready to come down to my corner, so I'm just going to stop and pay attention. And I stitch over that miter. I think if you just stitch a stitch over where your miter is, you end up in the right area to continue on. Stop, adjust everything. Now you can make your napkin square or rectangle. There's no law about shape of your napkin. We'll do a round one another time. So here I come again to the where the miter is, and if I take 1 stitch past the miter, that's about where I need to be. Stop, adjust my fabrics, or fabric, I only have 1. One stitch past the miter, adjust my fabrics again. I don't need everything all bunched up. And I'm heading up, coming towards my stitching from the first time. So I'm going to stop and just make sure I trim off if I had any thread tail, because I don't want to stitch the thread tail in. So I'm coming up to where my other stitching is. I'm just going to take my time and stitch over it, maybe ½ an inch, and I'm going to lock in place. Okay, so let's go back to our work table. Here we are. So you know what we have to do. Besides clean up the mess, is we stitched, so we press. I feel like it's like we stitched, so shall we press. That pieces of fabric coming from everywhere. If your stitching's not perfect, it's okay. It's a napkin. So our napkin is done. How's it looking? Can you see so we came up and turned, so that's all nice and neat. Okay, so if we want to put a button on, I thought I would be nice today, and well, I try to be nice every day, but and show you how to stitch a button on your machine. Most every machine has well, if you have this foot, the M foot, then you have a button stitch in the buttonhole section. Oh, thanks, Cindy. Cindy, are you going to stitch a button? So the first time you stitch a button, practice. I do them on the machine because when I do them by hand, I stitch them too tight, and then you can't get the button away from the fabric. So the button is going to go on the right side, and it's funny because it's going to go down the same end as the loop. Because if I take this and fold it up, and I don't have any, secret folding method, but when I fold this up, here's my loop. It's got to come back here to button. So I put my loop right there, and if I mark it with a pen, you won't see it. So I'm just going to mark it. I'm going to mark it with a pin. So see? So here's the pin, there's the loop. And it's about, and it really depends how tight you fold or how many pieces of silverware you put in. But it is about, from the corner, it is, I'd say about 4 inches. So if I come down, straight down from my corner, so let me open this up. I'm going to move the loop, otherwise it's underneath me, in the way. So if I come from that corner, let's see. If I use how much room do I have here? 1, 2, that's not. So if I took my ruler, my trusty ruler with the white lines, and that gives me 1, 2, that gives me 3 and 1 inch more. It's not going to give me my center. So if I just come down straight from the corner, I'm trying to look at something that would give you an idea of how straight you are. And I think you just have to look, well, here. So I'm going to move this pin now this way. So if I fold this in half and crease it, I know my pin's in there, but it's heat proof. Okay, so now I've got a crease down the center. And now I just need to come down about 4 inches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's my center right there. And if it's 3 7/8, 4 1/8, it's okay. It's okay. Oh, Cindy, gonna try a button later, huh? Well, as long as you guys try one sometime. And the buttonhole stitching might not go perfect, but that's one of the Lynn, another too much for you to think about, yeah. Well, I want to show you. So when I put this button on, it's kind of big for this guy, but I still used it, and it may seem like too much work for you, because I had to do it like I had to turn the crank the hand wheel manually, but it gives me that proper sew on so that my button isn't. I have, like I said, when I sew a button on, it's like a snap. You can't get it back. You can't move it. So I thought, well, we'll give it a whirl. So let me switch to the other camera. So this may go well and it may not. Okay, so I'm going to turn my camera. I'm just going to pick it up and move it so that you can see what stitch to pick. Oops, sorry. So pardon me, I don't mean to make you dizzy. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and, well, that's dark, isn't it? Hold on. All right, give me a second. I'm not sure why it's being so dark. And let's see. Oh, you know what? That keeps darkening on me, and it shouldn't go there. All right, here we go. So you're going to go to your buttonholes, wherever they may be on your machine. And if you look right there, do you see the picture of the button? Well, it's a circle with some holes. That's what we want. And do you see it calls for the M foot? And do you see how it's just a straight line of stitching? But you see, it's the M foot, so we got the right one. Okay, close your eyes for a second because I got to put the camera back, and I'm tipping my light over at the same time. Hold on, are we good there? Is that going to work all right? See if we can get some focus. Come on, be a good person and focus. I must have hit some button. I had a class this morning, and I don't know. Oh, it was there. Well, that looks pretty good. Okay, so let's give it a whirl. I gotta put my foot down and lift it up manually. Take my foot off. Now this little contraption here, this is where, what button am I using? I couldn't find a 2-hole button, but you do 2 holes at a time. But this, let me put the button in. So this is where, see, the button goes in. There we go. I had to shut the light out for that panel. So see how the button goes in? See how this is behind? And you see how the holes, see that? You with me so far? It's not bad so far. And you have these little red dots where the buttonholes go. Okay, now I've got my foot on. All right, my buttonholes are going left and right, so I'm going to lift my foot up. Don't try to thread your needle with that foot on either. You might be all right, but I wouldn't suggest it. So I need to, let me make a mark. Every time I think I'm putting something away, I gotta get it back out again. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see the mark, but we'll try. So I'm just gonna put a mark. It's a napkin. It's not a fitted jacket, so we'll be okay. So I'm gonna put that mark so it's halfway through my button. Now, no matter what button you're using, you're not going to just step on the pedal and go. This is a zigzag stitch that stays in place, and it's like industry standard. I never really realized they had one until a while back. So all buttons, unless they're handmade, the hole spacing is the same, which makes sense because they're going to do it in the factory. But I'm going to turn my hand wheel, and I've moved my button when I put the fabric on because I had no holes there. So I just scooted my button forward. So I'm going to put my needle down. So I'm turning my hand wheel forward, needle down, and you'll see in the front of the M foot there's a little shaft that comes out. So I'm going to go ahead and everybody hold on to your seats. Here we go. Oh, I can't. After all that, I was unthreaded. Oh, for Pete's sake. But it was exciting, wasn't it? So let me put my foot up. Oh. Oh, I gotta thread that myself after I just got done telling you that don't use your threader. Oh. Need to cut the end of my thread even. Okay, so I gotta go back to my line again. Put my foot down. And I'm gonna go off of that stitch and back onto it so I can go into my start from the beginning. I just want to get back. I just want to get back to the beginning. And even though I did this once, I've moved everything around. So I'm going to turn my wheel so that it goes in both holes. And it's going to lock it on one side. And if I was concerned and I needed it double, I could do it double. And that's it. Button's done. Now, it's a 4-hole, right? Was it a 4-hole? So I need to move my button forward to the other 2 holes. Put my foot down again. I'm going to turn my wheel again and make sure it went in both holes. Oh, and don't hit your cut pedal when you do that. Oh, for Pete's sakes, I came unthreaded again. I've been coming unthreaded a lot lately. It is time for service. Okay, so I didn't get any thread that time. We'll do this one more time and then we'll be done. Okay, so I'm going to put my foot down. And I'm going to make sure, because you can tell just by looking at it, because there's a little tiny shaft. I'm trying to get the thread from the first sewing out. There we go. There's a little tiny shaft that comes out, and that's what gives the extra room in the stitching. Okay, I did both sides. And if I wanted more, I would just do this. Just do it again. And it's going to stitch on one side 3 times, and that's it. Well, that wasn't so hard. So I want to make sure I get cards and letters about putting a button on your machine. And let me switch back to the other camera. So there's I can just trim my buttons up. But it gives the little shaft that comes, there's a little tiny shaft that comes out, little plastic shaft, between where it's stitching. So it leaves it so it's got room enough to use the button. One thing apparently I'm not good at. So there's our button. You see on the back looks fine. So we're all done. And that was a good sized thick button. It was kind of like, can you see it's a pretty thick button. And that was a 4-hole button. Okay, so I bring some up from the bottom and bring it in from the sides. Oh, this time I think I got it even the whole way up. Oh, that's a first. And then looky there. Who showed up just in the right place? The button. I have to say that I do, if you're gonna put a button on your napkin, I do say that the 1.5 inch cut strip loop is better. Because that button goes around and stays really nice. And when I rolled mine up, I stuck the silverware in after. It was easier for me. So there you are, or you can put it this way. So there's your napkin, easy mitered corner napkin, 1 fabric, loop, buttonhole. You can leave them both off if you want to and just do the napkins, but they go really fast because once you learn to do the folding and the pressing, to me that's the hardest part. The mitering is easy, the sewing is easy, so you should be able to whip up a half a dozen of these for Christmas. Just kidding. Oh, Christine, you like it? Okay, so everyone have a Merry Christmas. For those of you that watch Thursday nights at 7, because it's Christmas Eve, there'll be no Thursday night live YouTube. I really haven't decided yet if I'm going to do a Saturday. Next Saturday, it's the day after Christmas. I haven't decided yet. And I hope you don't mind that I haven't decided yet, because it's like I should probably not, but then I really, I know you guys look forward to them. So just keep an eye on the Facebook to see. I'll try to do something by Wednesday. I'm going to say no, there won't be anything next Saturday, but I'm not sure if I can adhere to that. So again, thanks for joining in. I appreciate everybody stopping by, and even if you didn't sew, that's fine, as long as you're watching and you're learning something. We're taking a little break from your Christmas wrapping, or wrapping while you're watching. Any of those work. Be kind enough to subscribe. Hit the little bell so you get notices of when I come live or when I post a video. And have a great holiday. Merry Christmas. And I think, I see, and maybe a Happy New Year before I see you. So I might not be with you until next year, 2021. It'll be a great year. So Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays.